My name is
Jenny.
David.
Lila,
Laurel,
Jen,
Lisa,
Dino,
Hari,
Kyle,
I was a
Jehovah's Witness.
Jehovah's Witness.
FLDS,
in the Amish church.
the chosen people.
I was a Scientologist.
I grew up a Mooney, a member of the Unification Church.
2x2.
And I am
Shunned.
shunned.
Sean.
Shunned.
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 Stunned.
Shunned.
My name is Megan. I am 37 years old. I was a Jehovah's Witness, and I am shunned.
All right, Megan. So how'd you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place? Is it something you were born into or what?
I was born into it, second generation, my mom and my dad.
Okay, so being born into it, second generation, do you know, like, was there an origin story? Do you know how great grandparents or whatever got into it, or grandparents got into this thing?
My father used to hitch a ride. He worked at a manufacturing plant. And at the time, I don't know exactly the full backstory, but he used to carpool with a Jehovah's Witness at the time. And just over the course of 6 months or so, they just delved into enough conversations that when they were offered a Bible study, my dad said yes. And the rest became history, as they say.
Oh, and it's always interesting how it's just a a chance encounter oftentimes, right? And my family, we just happened to move next to Jehovah's Witnesses, and then life changed. And for your family, it sounds like he's just going to work, right? And happens to meet someone who's a witness. They're always around, and away you went. So it's always interesting to see. Sometimes it's just such a small thing, a seemingly small thing, that takes a family down a whole different path.
Absolutely.
So going back to that point, so you don't know, do you know, were there any life circumstances back then? Had your parents just got married, or grandparents, had they like just gotten married or had a kid? Oftentimes it's around big life circumstances. Wars, things like that. Was there anything that you know of that might have been an inciting incident or something that maybe made him vulnerable to that?
My parents had moved away from their family about 30 or 40 minutes north of everybody that they'd known, and had bought a farm. And so they were making a fresh start, and it was incredibly complex. We were very poor. I remember being poor up through my teen years, really. My mom used to make our clothes and our dresses. We had a very, very strict budget on what money could be spent on and things of that nature. So my parents were struggling financially. And I know they were looking for meaning in life based on some of the stories that I can't accurately recall enough to say them here, but they were striving for spirituality. They were looking for something bigger than themselves. And for whatever reason, that conversation that my father had with that elder during those car rides just struck something that was enough to say, this is the truth as they saw it.
Okay, so that was it.
That was it.
Life struggles in general, which created that vulnerability. So yeah, I can see that. So you grew up in it. Can I ask, I guess, did you have siblings, or what was the composition, I guess, of your JW family?
So obviously my mother and my father. I am the youngest of four. I have two older brothers and an older sister, and we are all very different and very unique. But
Okay.
it's an interesting story, because as of now, my sister is actually the only one still left.
Your sister is the only one who's still a witness? That includes your
With
parents?
my parents. With my parents, yep.
Oh, with your parents. Okay. Wow. All right. Wow, you just never know how that's going to turn out in a family. It's interesting. Some family, all the kids stay in, and others, a lot of them, or all of them end up leaving. I'm sure we'll get into some of that. So you growing up in it, you've got all older siblings.
Mm-hmm.
What was what was your worldview growing up in that environment? Because it's not like it was just you. You had other people who had already kind of blazed the trail ahead of you a little bit. So what was your view of the world outside, I guess, of your home, of the world outside? Were you afraid of it? Were you curious about it? How'd you feel?
When I was little, because we grew up in a small town, we were pretty isolated in and of just inherently. That's just the way that it was. And my parents having a large enough farm, I was always outside. So from that perspective, I was always out playing in the brook or playing with the animals or, doing something of that nature. And that's kind of where I found calm. So the religion side, really, I didn't know anything. When I was younger, I didn't know anything better, except that it was the direction of my parents to say, we're not perfect, we're going to make mistakes. If nothing else, through the course of your life, if we've at least given you this as a grounding influence, then they felt that they had done a good job, essentially. And that was something that they always strove for us kids, was to say, we're gonna fall short, we're gonna make mistakes, but this is the truth. Stick with it, because if Armageddon comes tomorrow, we want to make sure that you survive, that you can continue to be a part of the family. And so walk the line, follow the guidelines, use it to fall in line, so to speak. And I mean, what little kid doesn't want to be told, I'm going to get to pet the lion or the tiger, or, go swim with dolphins. I mean, we all want that as little kids. So that side, it was good. But then when my book of Bible stories came out, things kind of shifted and the nightmares began. So that shifted the perception of the outside world to say, we're different. I felt different. And when I went to school, it was a small elementary school. And my sister was 2.5 years older than I was. So when I entered grade school and I was in first grade, she was in fourth. So when the conversations came, which they always do every year, when they would do the Christmas pageants, where they would do the Christmas, I don't remember what they're called, but the Christmas music programs.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to sit aside. That first year I had my sister, because it was her and I that had to, kind of go do coloring or do whatever and be viewed as outcasts. Because everybody else was like, why are you to the side? Why do you have to be at the lunch table? What's going on? What's so different about you guys? So having to be constantly on the spot. And then when my sister went to middle school, then it was just me. So for 3 years, it was that constant, am I doing the right thing? Did I do the right thing? Did I say the right thing? Like, can't have any cupcakes. I can't do that, and that honestly started a lot of anxiety that I still have to this day, unfortunately. But I guess from that perspective, I wish sometimes that I had that opportunity to be a little kid and not have to think with such adult frame of mind, but at the same time understand that I wouldn't be who I am today had I not gone through those experiences.
Well, sure. Well, had you not gone through them and risen above them in ways and not letting it, because it can take you to your knees. And so, yeah, that I think we've talked about, perfectionism is often a byproduct of growing up in an environment where your mental and emotional safety is found through doing the right thing, making sure you never make a mistake so that you can never get in trouble. It's a little coping mechanism for dysfunction, where
Yeah.
you're not allowed to be human. And so it's a shame that starts so far back, even in childhood. It's just a little girl in school terrified of making the wrong decision because of what that could mean.
Now, that does mean as an adult that I do not leave any cupcake alone. If I pass a cupcake now after saying goodbye to all of those birthday parties, you better believe I indulge now. Maybe a little bit more than I should, but you know what? I feel I've earned that right.
Yes, you have time to make up for lost cupcakes.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Um, I have to ask, I mean, just because the way you said it about like the Bible story book, that being something that kind of stood out to you when you were a kid and the nightmares began. Uh, what was it about the Bible story book that really grabbed you in particular?
I don't remember the exact, I can see the image It's the one where there's, maybe it was a story about Sodom and Gomorrah, but it's the one where they have the meteors that are striking Earth and the vivid reds and whites and oranges and just the fear that you see on people's faces. And just that was what just, it struck me to the core to say, oh my God, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Like, I was just like, I want to live. What do I got to do to live? And just, yeah, it's just, I remember I would have night terrors and I would scare my parents so bad because they would come running to my room and the fears, it's just, I was having nightmares about that I was going to die, that I wasn't living my life the way I was supposed to, and that I'd done something wrong and that I was not going to be judged worthy enough to make it through the great tribulation and into the new world.
Yeah, so the fear, you take this concern about making mistakes because there are such dire consequences, right? If I eat this cupcake at this birthday party, our meteor is gonna start raining from the
Right.
sky on me. You're just a little kid, and that's intense. Little kids should be playing with their toys or playing outside with their little friends or eating birthday cake. They shouldn't be terrified of the world ending around them for having fun.
The
Not hurting.
adults were having a hard enough time trying to cope with what they were being asked to, let alone little children.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, little children in and of themselves, sure, they're little adults, but the children were being asked to take on responsibilities above and beyond adults, even so much as saying that there was a unique territory that only kids had. And to put that pressure on them to not only be ostracized because of differences in belief, but also to say, preach the word of God to them and save them, or there could be bloodshed on you. Like, why would you do that to a kid? It just
It's a
still
great
boggles my
way to
mind.
control them early.
Yep.
It's the fear, obligation, and guilt, the fog that keeps people stuck, and they leave no stone unturned, not even children, unfortunately. Putting all this pressure, and uh, I often find it interesting for a lot of people who are second gen, myself included. My parents pushed me, and I'm sure your parents pushed you to do a lot of things that they never had to do. They didn't
Mm.
have to go to school as a little kid and stand up in front of everyone every day when it was time for the anthem or the Pledge of Allegiance or whatever. Like these were things that little JW kids are often asked to do, things that JW adults who are pushing them to do those things have never had to do. They don't know what it's even like, and it's a struggle. It's tough as a kid to be different when you just want to fit in, isn't it? You just
Absolutely.
you just want to be like everybody else. Um, So, well, actually, while we're talking about school, let's ask about school. So what was school like for you growing up as a young witness? Was it a haven in any place, a respite, or was it just brutal?
It had two sides to it. You
Okay.
know, again, I mentioned our humble upbringing. So I was never one of the popular kids just because, we never had flashy clothes. That was never what our life was about, and I was proud of my life and where I came from. And I knew that my parents were doing, again, I knew my parents were doing the best they could, and there was no other reference that I had. So from that perspective, I was pretty happy in school. I got picked on and teased a lot because, again, like my clothes came from thrift stores, or they didn't match. They weren't the up and coming thing, and I was intelligent going through school. Whenever we were getting ready for the meetings, I would pore over anything that had to do with historical facts. Brought up a little bit earlier about, potentially going to Greece, but it fascinated me. History always fascinated me. And it was something that my father and I had in common, was that we always used to just pour over and say, oh, look at that. That's so cool. Look at that. We just found out about this archaeological dig, and look what they just found in regards to the tablets, and, try to dig those pieces apart. So when I was in school, I was a brainiac. I was the one that went up to the teacher and said, "Can I have extra homework?" And then people looking at me and saying, well, "Are you nuts?" Or like, the curve, the grade curve. I was the one that always tipped the scales, and my classmates didn't like me very much. Let's put it to you that way. They didn't like when they found out that I was in their class.
So not only are you
But
the weird JW kid who doesn't fit in, and
yeah.
the kid with the yesteryear's clothes, I identify
Mhm.
there, but you were also the Brainiac kid, and so that also attracts negative attention from others. Wow, you
Yep.
didn't stand a chance in those ways.
No, and it was actually kind of interesting because when the times, I mentioned the age gap between my sister and I. So my mother would always say, like at the end of the year, like if we got A's through school, like up through eighth grade, my mom, there was always an incentive there. And my maternal grandmother would do the same. So every year it was war. It was on with my sister and me. Because I was going to beat her regardless of because she's a brainiac too, and very, very book smart. And so it was always just I was like, I'm gonna beat her, I'm gonna beat her, it's gonna be the year, I'm gonna get A's. And then when I was in eighth grade, I actually because again, she was older than me, I had her report card, I knew what I needed to beat. And so I said, I'm going to get all A pluses in eighth grade, all of them. And I remember getting my report card at the end of it. And there was one that was down as an A. I think it was for like a final, like for a final exam or something like that. And I went in and I bartered with that teacher. I said, you got to fix it. What did I do wrong? What can I do to fix this? This has got to be an A plus. Come on, I'm so close. And so it created a very competitive spirit, which was wrong because you're not supposed to have a competitive spirit, right?
Right,
So
right.
it was kind of like it was a little bit of that yin and yang. But through high school, um, I was homeschooled entirely. So I worked from home because we had the farm. So I was taking care of the farm, and so my life, I guess, my world became even smaller through high school if it's even possible for that to be the case. But that's where I was a lot of my life now is being self-taught. And it's actually been a huge advantage in my professional career. And it started way back then.
Um, well, yeah, I can definitely see how that would make one need to be self-reliant in a lot of ways, and of course we'll get to that. Um, wow, so you did? Can I ask? Did you have friends at school? Did you? Obviously, there was a tough time there. Was the other? You did enjoy the academic stimulation to some
Mhm.
degree, but did you have any little friends there or anything? Did you have a group that were your people?
Off and on, yes, but it was surface.
Okay.
It was surface level because I
You leave
really
the house,
was.
right?
Yeah, I was afraid. Like it was browbeaten into me to say, not browbeaten, but it was very strictly enforced to say they're not your friends. And be ready because if Armageddon comes tomorrow, they won't be here. Only you will. And so that was another ostracizing factor to say, oh my goodness, like, wow. And it helped, I guess it helped to alienate me more from the people that I was around because of that perspective.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I
It wasn't
mean,
that I didn't
Jehovah's
want
Witnesses.
friends. I was more afraid that my parents would find out or my sister would tattle on me to my parents if she saw that I had friends.
Oh, I get that.
So it
Did
was
you have a different word provided for you for those people instead of friends?
unbelievers.
Ah, unbelievers. Okay. Um, that's such a judgmental term for everyone else on the outside.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so let's talk then about home life growing up. So, I mean, we know that I appreciated earlier what you said about your parents and their attitude, the way they said, "Hey, we're gonna mess up, we're gonna make mistakes, we're not perfect." It sounds like, but if nothing else, we want you to take away this one thing, obviously, that they felt meant salvation, and that really cuts to the fact that, again, Jehovah's Witnesses aren't typically just evil, calculating people sitting around trying to wreck lives. They think they're doing the right thing. They have this belief system that they believe in, and they think they're also afraid of this God who's going to rain meteors down on the earth. So,
Mhm.
you know, they believe in this thing, and they may have positive intent, even if the outcomes aren't always positive. When you look back at growing up in that environment, so what was the temperature of the room? What was home life like for you growing up in it?
Ah, there were some good things about it, and there were some not so good things about it. Both of my parents lived secondly, and they lived different lives than what the congregation wanted them to see, and a lot of what was done behind closed doors was not for anybody else to ever find out or know about. And being in this age now since COVID, and talking about mental health and addictions and proclivities that we have that are hereditary, or however we can deal with, let's call it like it is. It was stressful to be a Jehovah's Witness
Yeah.
because of exactly what we talked about, that belief of perfectionism, constantly being watched to make sure that you're falling in line, that you're doing the right thing, that if Armageddon comes tomorrow, are you going to live or are you going to die? Who are my friends? What's my support structure like? Who can I really trust? To constantly have that, it goes to show that there are a lot of individuals in there today who have left, whatever, that have battled mental health issues.
Mhm.
And my parents were not immune. And there were times that it did come out. People did tell the elders what was going on at home. And, the disciplinary action was taken. And I think that was one of the biggest things, and we'll get into it later, why there is still resentment that I have to a certain extent against my parents. Only because I was told and given that instruction to say exactly what we talked about earlier, that they weren't perfect, that they were going to make mistakes. But then when the time came and I made mistakes, I wasn't given the same courtesy or respect. And, there was a saying that I heard probably about 8 months ago through self healing on my own. And it said, your parents do the best they can. And part of that first step as being an adult is you got to let go of your childhood and you got to forgive your parents. And part of that is understanding that they may have done the best they could for you, but it may not have been the best thing for you, may not have been what you needed. And that's one of the things that gravitating has been the hardest thing for me is, my father and my mother wanted to do the right thing, but there were demons that they were battling within themselves through their families that were not going to go away. And they were not being given the tools through the organization to get better. They weren't being given the direction to say it's okay to look for outside help. It's okay to talk to somebody about what you're going through so you can work it through your head, not pounding and saying, read the scriptures more. You're not studying enough. You're not in the congregation involved enough. That wasn't it. It was the knowledge of saying and understanding that whether they're elders or ministerial servants or wherever they are within the organization, they're not mental health professionals. And that was the part that really struck my family hard, was that things were being said and advice was being given that never should have been given to my family. And it had a direct impact on how me and my siblings were raised. And quite frankly, some of the issues that we're all still dealing with to this day, trying to grapple with, but we're trying to break that. So from the home side, they did the best they could, but there are things that happen that, as I just mentioned, we're still actively all working through in our own ways to get over and be better.
Well, I it is, humans are complex, and I when people come to me to work with me in my recovery practice, uh people often fall on one side or the other. One side is fuck Jehovah's Witnesses, fuck my family. I hate those
Mhm.
rat bastards. They ruined my life. They're the worst people in the world. I wish it would all burn. And
Mhm.
then on the other side, there's I have compassion for my parents, and I feel for them and where they came from, and because of that, I can't feel any anger toward what they did. In fact, I was taught not to love myself at all. So I
Mhm.
almost feel like I deserve that treatment. And really healing involves a lot of kind of being able to hold both things to some
Mhm.
degree, and to
Mhm.
balance that compassion with other for them and where they came from, because we're all born babies and nobody is born saying, hey, I'm going to one day have a family and I'm going to shipwreck it with this thing. Nobody does that, right? So on one hand, we have to have compassion and love, but on the other side, we also have to have compassion and love for ourselves. And sometimes that means it is okay to have some anger. It's okay to have both, to say,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, mom and dad, that you went through that and that you couldn't be the parents you needed to be, and you couldn't live a healthy life. But also, bro, what did you
Yeah,
do? Like, I didn't deserve
exactly.
that crap. I never
Exactly.
deserved that. And I can forgive you, but also maybe I can't ever have you in my life because you're so toxic. And until you get help, like you mentioned addiction earlier,
Mhm.
addiction, being one of Jehovah's Witnesses, is living in addiction, but it's addiction to an ideology. It's it,
Mhm.
runs your entire life. You'll give up your kids for it.
Mhm.
It's everything. When you lie on the road, when you what is it? You lie down and you walk on the road, and when
Yes.
you get up or go to bed or whatever that scripture says, like, it is dominant. They have to get a hit every time they go on vacation. Like, they have to
Mhm.
go to a meeting. It is an addiction itself. And a lot of people are often suffering with other addictions as well, to cope. And they've got this other
Yeah,
thing because shame is addiction fuel, and
it
Jehovah's
is.
Witnesses use shame for everything. So it's just this self-perpetuating cycle of self-destruction, and it's horrible. And you can't get them out of it unless they have to save themselves. And unfortunately, most will never be able to.
No, and I think growing up, that's one of the biggest things that actually has molded me. And there's two things that have molded me really into the person that I am right now, currently in my life. And the first one was is and again, this is through no fault of either of my parents, but I would watch my mother. And my mom married my father very, very young. She was 16, my dad was 19. And she was actually pregnant with my eldest brother when she graduated from high school. And so her opportunities in life were already starting to shut down just because of decisions or choices that were made. I mean, that's fact. And then when my parents went and became Jehovah's Witnesses, even more so, because being a woman, you're not, I mean, sure, they say that the feminine vessel, you're the weaker one. You're considered, they say, oh, you're, well, a weaker vessel if it's, crystal. You treat that much more importantly than you would a coffee cup. Give me a break. No, you don't. Women are taught to be subservient to men. We're not able to go out and get careers, to think for ourselves, to better ourselves, or to make a difference in the world. We're taught that get a menial job, have a menial existence, because your life is all about serving Jehovah, and marry a guy, somebody who's very high within the organization. The higher up, the better, and you are there to exemplify him. You are there to praise him and make him look the best he can within the congregation and amongst other families. And I looked at that, and being the person that I was and being with my dad, because I was definitely a daddy's girl. Okay, I admit it. But having these conversations with my father and just being stimulated so much by the intellectual conversations, it didn't jive. It didn't make sense. And I'm looking at my mom, and she's raising us kids and the family, and looking and saying, why can't I be more? Why can't I say that I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses, but have my own business? Be strong about it, or learn a new craft, or go to college and learn something that would actually make me more beneficial speaking to others about why it's good to be a Jehovah's Witness. and all of those doors got shut.
If you'd like some extra content, if you'd like to learn more about our guests today, maybe even have an opportunity to connect further with them, you can do so by joining the Backroom tier at patreon.com/shunned.
To say no. And the older I got, the more I understood to say, wait a minute, alarm bells started going off to say, can't think for myself. I can't be my own person. I have to be subservient to somebody else. Like what? What happened to equal partnership here? I'm being told who I'm allowed to love, who I'm allowed to be friends with, how I'm to act. And if I go to conventions, all the way to the point of what I can and can't wear. Really? It just started more and more to not jive. And so with my mom, it really drove home to me to say, even before things that happened, and I know we're going to talk about it later, but something broke within me to say, I do not want to owe my survival to anybody else, especially a man. I'm smart enough, I'm intelligent enough. My father and others have really inculcated this thirst for truth and for knowledge. Why can't I take care of myself? Why do I need somebody else to do that for me? It made no sense. And then to add insult to injury and using scripture against them, why do you have a song that says make the truth your own if you're not allowed to do that? If you're told make the truth your own and how it affects to yourself, why say that when you don't allow people to do exactly that, to find out who they are and how the scriptures and the principles apply to themselves? Because if God really are the only ones that can judge us because they know in our heart who we are and what's driving us to do it, why do they have the power to shun us? Made no sense.
Because the song is make, quote, the truth. Make Jehovah's Witness truth your own.
Mhm. Yep.
And to take on that, and then therefore they are your judges.
Mhm.
They're not interested. I remember when I was waking up, there was a quote I heard, and it was something like, "Run with those that seek, run with those that search for truth, and run far away from those that claim to have found it."
Mhm.
And what I appreciated about that quote at the time was I was sitting here, Jehovah's Witnesses, by nature of calling their religion the truth, they have no need to search anymore, right? This is
Right.
it. You can turn your brain off now. You don't have to think anymore. It's all
Yeah.
over. You found the one thing and you're done. So
Yeah.
coast through life in this miserable existence of just trying to save people, which they barely, it's just busy work.
Mhm.
And that's the life. And it's a really sad life to live today, just trying to tread water, basically hoping for some other future life that I hate to
Yeah.
tell them isn't coming, where they're gonna live forever in their little earthly paradise. I don't think that,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I don't think that's gonna happen like they think it is.
I think that's one of the biggest things too, is we'll get into what it is that I do for a living, but what I do at the end of every day now, if it did come tomorrow, I'd be okay.
Sure.
You asked me that 5 years ago, I wouldn't have said that. It would have been the complete opposite. It would have been fear, nightmares, cold shakes, all of it. But to also come to that realization of saying, okay, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes, but now I feel like I'm living my life for the right reasons.
Sure.
And I'm doing it and understanding that I will be accountable when all is said and done. But I'm eradicating day by day that fear. And as the triggers pop up and crop up, and they do, they definitely do, to see them for what they are.
Well, I'm glad that you're working on and through that, and that you're well, again, we'll get into your work and what you do later, but I'm glad that you're doing things that do give you purpose and fulfillment today. Instead that are reflective of who you are, and not something that was put upon you as though this is the only way you can be.
Mhm.
So What was life? So we were talking about home life to some degree. What was life like going to the Kingdom Hall for you guys? Were you all the family that was always at the meetings and always hands in the air, commenting and giving talks and stuff out in the service? Who were you guys?
Oh, we were usually the family that sat in the back row.
Okay.
One member or another of my family was usually black sheep. My eldest brother, there's about 12 years difference between my eldest brother and me. So he's the oldest, I'm the youngest. So when I was 6, he was disfellowshipped. So that really set the tone for childhood and going to the meetings and the congregation. Because it always felt whenever we went to the congregation, we were always looked at as a family that had somebody that was disfellowshipped. A child, he was 18 when he got disfellowshipped. So it was kind of like, it was immediately like, okay, this family's trouble, and it was sporadic with meeting attendance, going out in service Saturdays every once in a great while. But I'll never forget it because my father's a truck driver. We were at meeting, I kid you not, we were at meeting one day on a Tuesday night and my dad was late. So he brought his tractor up the road. The power lines were not up to height. He took the power out to the entire road, including the Kingdom Hall. So you want to talk about being like that family, like that everybody's like, yeah, you guys are gonna go down for infamy for that one. Like you're never gonna be forgotten as that family. So I mean, my father had worked to be a ministerial servant, a few times, and I mean, we were never like that stellar family. It was more so that we were kind of on the cusp of saying, we were there, we knew it was the truth, we knew we needed to be there, but not openly engaging and going out of our way, so to speak, to be more. My sister, on the other hand, when she became 16, she really went after it. She did the pioneering. She really wanted to take, a stance within the congregation and take it to the next level. And to this day, I think she still does. I haven't talked to her for over 13 years. But out of all of us, again, she is the only one aside from my parents who's still in. So that pretty much speaks for itself.
So, for yourself, growing up in it, was there anything that you kind of described your family? Was there any attachment yourself as Megan? Did you have any attachment yourself to the meetings or anything? Did you like being there on any level, or did you like going out in service, or did you have any friends? Was there anything there for you?
I didn't really have a lot of friends. When I was younger, I was excited to go because it got me out of the house and I got to dress up and that traditional I'm a little kid thing and this is something different. Field service was not fun. My mom used to give us candy and soda. My dad was like, ginger ale and pretzels, you get car sick. So we're like, Dad, please tell me you're not going out in service today, please. Because it was all about the breaks. It was not about, going door to door. And the older I got, and as my family, my elder brother came back, he was reinstated. And then as, my brothers got older, my sister, and they started getting married and having their own families, more came to surface about our family and our life and mistakes. And so when time came for me to be on the marriage market, it was brutal. It was so brutal. I wanted friends. I wanted to be accepted so bad, but I didn't fit. I never felt like I fit in really, because things just started to not add up for me by around 15. I did what I needed to do. I got really excited about it and I went through and did all the baptismal questions and I got baptized at 16 and felt this is the truth. This is right. This is a way that I want to live my life. And my family was so proud of me for doing it. And a year later, I started getting anxiety and panic attacks. I didn't want to go to the meetings. I felt like I was being watched and like everything was being critiqued. And like, there were times the brothers would come to the congregation and I would just want to strike up conversations. And the elders' wives, as soon as the guys would walk away, the elders' wives would take them away and they'd hush really, really quiet down below. And then I would never talk to the brother again. I'm like, I was just having a conversation. I wasn't trying to marry the guy. Like, really? Like, can I just be an individual here and just be accepted for who I am and not my family and what may or may not have happened, or like not be a cause of gossip? It really, really bothered me. And as I got older, it just got more and more stressful. And it became that the Kingdom Hall was not a place, was not a safe haven for me anymore. It didn't feel like one.
So you get baptized at 16 and it sounds like things changed really quick for you. Like you did the thing. Were you in any way hoping that maybe getting baptized, and maybe you didn't even realize it at the time, but in any way level, did you hope that maybe getting baptized would fix some of those situations or bring maybe a positive look to the family and to you so that things could change? And then when you realized, oh crap, none of this is changing, then the panic attacks and stuff started?
Yes, absolutely. Because I was at that point, there, I was getting a lot of pressure to say, you're 16. Like, you need to take the next step. If you want to be part of this organization and you want to continue with your life, this is the next step you need to do. But at the time, I really felt it was the truth. And that's kind of the part that was resounding, was I thought everything that I was being taught, it was right, because I hadn't gotten to that point yet of doing a lot of the research on my own. And I mean just research just in general about the policies and the doctrines of what Jehovah's Witnesses believed versus others, and how it all meshed, and what it meant for my future. But I do remember one of the changing points for me, there was two of them. I was 17, I was at a district convention in Portland. And of course, I was one of the naughty people that walks around the convention center and you're not supposed to while the program's going. I was one of those, okay? I didn't like sitting all day, so I would walk. And they were as they are known to do, they were doing the piece on missionaries, the young women that had come back from missionary service. And they were talking about their experiences and about how they had done Bible studies and they were building kingdom halls. And I think I'm pretty sure it was in Rwanda, because it struck me at the time to say, you're not really caring about people. And remembering when Jesus was teaching and he fed them loaves and fishes. It wasn't just you're here to learn. It's, I'm here to take care of the whole person. And to hear them as missionaries going out there, you never once heard to say, oh, well, we helped with clean water. You know, there's a refugee settlement here. We went and volunteered for the day to help pass out medicine or food or help to build homes or whatever the case may be. It was strictly, we're here to indoctrinate, we're here to teach you the word of God and to build a kingdom hall and ask for your money. And it just, that shifted in my head to say, this is wrong. And then all of a sudden I started hearing more and more about donations, give your donations. This is what we're doing. This is what's going on, and it's just like, the more they asked for money, the more I was just kind of like, why were you not like the Pharisees? Because it just kind of, in my head, it just kind of started shifting more and more down that path. Then I felt like the way that we were actually supposed to live our lives.
Well, yeah, and when you learn about things like their relief work and such, where they go in and brothers and sisters use their own money, talents, tools, time to go to, let's say, Hurricane Katrina hits and brothers and sisters go down there and they help out only the brothers and sisters down there. They're not helping out
Yes.
others. Unless you're maybe JW adjacent and they think somehow that you might become a
Yes.
JW. But then when all of those volunteer workers leave, they send in people from the society to go into those areas and then to start asking for insurance checks. You find out what it's really about, and you see that they collect a lot of money, but they don't put out their own money. The organization, it takes it in, but it's not really going out to help people. Like in Africa, they're not helping those people. There's no food.
And that's actually kind of what started, part of what it is I do now. But I had the ability to go to a different convention, a logistics convention for humanitarian aid organizations. And that was so eye-opening to me. It was probably about 7 years ago. And there were all faiths represented, Jews, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, atheists even. And they were all there for one common goal, and that was to help. So in areas of war-torn Middle East or desert areas in Africa, there was one purpose. It was, how do we utilize what each organization has the ability to do? What is our strength? Is it water, food, medicine, housing, in our case, furniture? How do we all come together to help this community get back up on its feet, or help these individuals who, through no fault of their own, are going through these circumstances and they need help and they need support, and they're being called in from the country, from the government, to say, help us, please. It was just such a total shock to be said that these organizations are Babylon the Great, have nothing to do with them, but they're doing more to help people than we ever were taught to. It was eye-opening.
Yeah, it's we had a tornado that came through, I don't know, it's been 10-15 years ago or whatever now, but this little town Henryville practically wiped off the map, and it was all these other religions bringing in truckloads of like trucks with washers and dryers in them and stuff, so people could do clothes and just like all this stuff. And I think, and I remember that the witnesses were among the last to be in the area. And I remember a brother telling me that we as Jehovah's Witnesses, we waited. We waited to see what the real need was. And we weren't like all those other attention-seeking whores, basically. It was just like, what are you talking about? You didn't go in there and help. You let everybody else do the dirty work. Then you went in there and what'd you do? Tarp one witness's roof or something? Or, what'd you do? Because you didn't help anybody else. And then you throw everybody else under the bus who's actually helping. Today, in September is my anniversary. And so I have this ex-JW help day. And people donate, and then I take the money and I go out into the community and I do random acts of kindness for people. I put my money in, and then I match X amount and then take these funds and go do this. I'm an atheist. I'm not doing this for any higher power or being or anything. But one ex-Jehovah's Witness, being supported by others as well, but even on my own, would be doing more than Watchtower's doing as a multi-billion-dollar global organization. And that is crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy to think of. They don't care. They don't care about people. They care about money. And they collect a lot of it.
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. So you got baptized at 16. You're quickly your perspective started changing. It sounds like within a year, basically, you started realizing.
Yeah, it was fast. It was fast. I was shocked how fast it was looking back.
This didn't change things. And now you're talking to me. So some things must have changed between that young baptized girl and today. So where did life take you? So you were homeschooled. I don't know. Did you do anything at like 18 when you graduated, or were there any seminal moments that we're overlooking?
So I actually had the opportunity to go down to Wellington, Florida for a winter. And so I was able to connect with a congregation down there for a short period of time. And it was very enlightening. It put some of my doubts, at least temporarily, to bed, because it was fresh area. It was sunshine and light and, a new congregation. But very, very quickly, before I left, because I was there for about 5 months, I started to see that they had the same issues as the other congregation. only worse. As far as just some of the things that were going on behind the scenes with, you know, the nitpicking and the clicks and the tattletaling and just and perceptions on people's life. And it was just like, ew. So by the time I came back to New Hampshire, I was kind of like, okay, well, now I was kind of starting to see that some of the methodology was the same, but it was becoming very apparent that regardless of where you went or what congregation you went to, all you were dealing was just a different set of dynamics, but they were the same dynamics regardless of where you went, because it was all under the same guise of, I'm helping you if I tattle on you, or I'm helping if I gossip to this person about things that they knew nothing about. And it was just like, okay. So I did that, and I actually started dating a brother in Florida for a short period of time because I felt I really connected with him. I thought he was a really great guy. And he really is a good guy. But I started having people come up to me and telling me things that I needed to be watchful for. Like, he doesn't go out in service 4 times a month, or you got to be careful. You know, I can't tell you any more than this, but he's been disciplined for something very serious that may have implications in your marriage if you get married. I'm like, whoa, I'm just dating the guy. Like, I'm not even thinking about putting a ring on it or anything yet. Like, whoa, slow down. And it really just reinforced with me to say, oh my goodness, like, this can't be my life. I'm going to be critiqued to the 10th degree, and I'm never going to be an elder's wife. I'm not going to be a ministerial servant's wife. Never going to be anything close to that. And then it created a lot of complications, and it eventually led to me looking outside of the congregation to find somebody that I could date, that I could relate to, that I could see myself building a future with. And we all know how taboo that is.
Mm-hmm. Interesting to hear you say, I wasn't, even thinking about putting a ring on it. Because for Jehovah's Witnesses, when they start dating from day one, you are supposed to be dating with a view to marriage. That is like your first date. People are coming up to you asking you, well, when are you getting married? Basically, and it's like,
yes.
I don't know. I just met this person.
Can I just find out who he is first? That's the purpose of dating, right? Like, it's to see if you're compatible. So yeah.
Or to get you roped in deeper. I think that's
True.
the purpose of it inside the organization. Get you married to another witness. Now you have 2 witness families providing pressure, and you're stuck, or feel stuck, if nothing else. So you decide you're going to start looking outside the organization at that point. Is that what did you just start dating outside, or did you still believe it? Like, at that point,
I still believed it. I felt I could live a double life.
Okay.
I felt like, don't get me wrong. I wasn't going out with a view of, having premarital sex or, going into any of those realms. I genuinely just wanted somebody I could talk to without the fear of being judged or having it get back to anybody else about what it was I was doing, so that I could have that opportunity to find out for myself which way I wanted to go without being pressured from all sides to be a certain way or live a certain way. So it just happened. It just happened. I met a guy that I was working at a coffee shop, and he was a regular customer, came in all the time, and he just out of the blue said, "You want to have dinner? Just sit down and talk for a while." And that's all it was. That's really all it was. It was just for about 9 months, I just had somebody I could talk to, and he became my best friend. And then that's really when the doubt started.
Well, at that point, you start realizing you've been lied to about who people on the outside are, right?
Yes. Yeah, he was more faithful more trusting, and he was more helpful than anybody that I had known within the organization. And he actually helped me. Everybody who has been in my life has helped me in some way or another to grow to the next level of my life. He didn't stay in my life on a permanent basis. There was no way that was going to be the case, but it was enough that it led me on a path where I ended up getting approved for dating an unbeliever. So it got found out. And then things, I know we're going to talk about it, things ended up developing that got to the point that I got shunned.
It is interesting that what you were looking for was a non-judgmental person to be around, and you could see that you couldn't get that freedom inside the organization. You were only going to get that freedom from the constant judgment and the snitch culture and all of that stuff on the outside, or at least, if nothing else, that was attractive to you, to be able to find some mental and emotional safety somewhere.
Well, it didn't help that, it's just going out and preaching to complete strangers, and you knew that they don't want to talk to you anyway.
Sure.
To this day, I still have an innate fear of public speaking, like to the death. If somebody says, "Oh, can you come to this forum and speak on this subject and talk about what it is you do?" I'm like, "No, please don't ask me to." And that's even in situations where people actually want to hear what it is I have to say. And I'm like, "Nope, please don't." So, so you also add that element into it as well, as to you're in a situation where you constantly feel uncomfortable for one reason or another, for a variety of reasons why what we talked about. It's
Well,
just not, it was
vulnerability
not a
is
safe haven.
sure. Mental and emotional vulnerability is seen as a weakness among the witnesses, and it is exploited. Whereas in the real world, outside, around the right audiences,
Mhm.
people want that vulnerability. I mean, you're doing some of that right now, which I appreciate even more now, knowing how you feel about public speaking, that you would do this, because when you share who you really are in front of the right audience, it's appreciated, and it's not seen as an opportunity to seize upon some vulnerability and to take advantage of it. It is handled and appreciated that you would be open and vulnerable, and that's that's a beautiful part of growing, is being able to do that once you realize that you can be safe in the world outside of the world that you came from.
Mhm.
Um, so I appreciate even more that you're out here talking today. So how did things? So you end up getting reproved
Mhm.
because of this relationship or whatever.
Mhm.
And how do things go after that? Because now I guess you're would you just reinforce the whole black sheep narrative of your family to some degree? Now, here's another member of your
Yeah.
family. Oh, that had to have been kind of crushing in some way. How'd you feel about that?
It was devastating. It was absolutely devastating because I felt like I was doing what anybody else had the right to do, and that was to connect with somebody. And
Yeah.
that I was being put in a position of saying I was doing something wrong. But at the same time, the brothers in the congregation weren't looking twice at me because I wasn't living up to a standard that they felt I needed to adhere to. I wasn't out in field service. I wasn't trying to be a pioneer. I wasn't, my hand wasn't up at all the kingdom, at all the meetings for the kingdom hall. I wasn't studying and doing all of the things that a woman is supposed to do within the organization to be desirable to the right man. And that to me was what was so crushing.
I get that. Of course, there are obviously brothers who are also not doing all the things too, right? And who also find themselves in that situation. And it's really sad because you can see that your worth, your value is seen not for who you are, but only
Mhm.
what you do in a performative way inside the four walls of the Kingdom Hall. That you are judged entirely, for the most part, on what you're doing there, or as it relates to those four walls. That's why all witness marriages are set up to fail. It's not about who you are and finding someone who's a good mate for you, a good partner for you, a good match for your personality, your interests, your communication styles, all the different things. It's just, well, I mean, she's a pioneer, and so I guess they're good marriage mate. If you're feeling stuck in your life after cult involvement and can't find the life you want, leaving a cult is a new beginning on a path to healing, not some magical end itself that is healing. Relief from the immediate pain feels good at first, but that's not necessarily true happiness. The feelings of social awkwardness and isolation, lack of self worth, perfectionism, patterns of being attracted to emotionally unavailable people, not even knowing who you are yourself, all of these things and more are lingering effects of that environment. Being in a cult isn't just following a doctrine, but it's following a culture, a way of life, a way of being that doesn't just go away because you stopped attending meetings. If you want to shortcut the path to healing instead of trying to figure it out on your own, maybe even work with me professionally in my cult recovery coaching practice, you can find opportunities to do that and also for other cool resources at my website, exjwhelp.com. That's exjwhelp.com.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
And that was the piece too, is it was the older I got, the more I was coming to realize to say, I mentioned it before, I didn't want to report to a man my life.
Sure.
I wanted to grow myself as an individual and be seen as something more than just a wife or a member of the congregation or somebody that needed to step up and give an external version that would be accepted and have to hide who I really was behind closed doors. Because the reality was, and if you talk to any member of my family, my friends, or even my husband, they'll all tell you and say, I'm fiery. Even through the course of this podcast, my feelings and my beliefs are strong. And there's a reason for that. It comes from the struggles and the pain and the heartache and everything that has stemmed from this experience. It's not something where I look back on and I say, oh my God, curse my life, because certain elements of that have made me who I am today. But there's a lot of it, and quite frankly, when I got shunned, that really reinforced within myself to say I had to be true to who I am as a person, and that I have a voice and that I have a right, especially as a woman, to say we're taught, especially that we will not make it in the world on our own, that we need a man to survive. And I'm not going through the whole, Me Too movement of saying, women deserve all of the rights as men do. I'm not going there. I'm just going into the sense to say that the right and the ability to say, if we want to be single, we want to be married, that needs to be our choice, and not in such a way as from a financial standpoint, we're told we can't go to college, we can't think for ourselves, and that when push comes to shove, the man rules the home. Now, I'm not saying from the headship arrangement that that's not something that doesn't have a place within a marriage, because my husband and I, our fights are good. I won't lie about differences of opinion on certain things, but there's a mutual respect there. And there's times that he bends to me and I bend to him, because it's not about him versus me. It's about us versus the problem. And I feel like that was a huge thing that was not taught growing up. Was never that. It was never taught you were a team. It was always when push came to shove and it came down to it, the man made the ultimate decision and you're just a woman. You're just along for the ride. And so that's one of the biggest takeaways that I had through this, and why I'm so happy to be here, is for women, young women especially, that are struggling, whether they've already been shunned or they're thinking about branching out on their own. There are so many women out here for support, that we've broken away and that we're making it. We're succeeding. We're struggling in a lot of ways, mentally, financially, however, but the reality is that there are tools here to help us get to that next step and grow personally, professionally, whatever, that what we have been taught is not accurate. You're not gonna fail. You're not gonna flounder. You're not gonna be left to the wayside and forgotten, because there are so many women, myself included, that are proof that you can get out and you can heal, you can grow, and utilize your strengths to take yourself to the next step. And that, I
Sure.
think, is one of the biggest things I learned.
Well, there's also nothing wrong with reaching out for help. And, I get to see lots of women that I work with in my coaching practice who are speaking in front of boards of directors, holding
Yeah.
meetings and talking to, CEOs of major, very well-known corporations at times in big roles. And
Mhm.
um, it's that witness life is so limiting and really takes away agency from women, which is a shame because there's no reason women can't do anything that men can do. I mean, look at the world around us. There's lots of things out there. And I appreciate that you said that you and your husband sometimes have, I don't know if you said fiery or passionate arguments, but a phrase I always liked is if you never argue as a couple, then one of you is unnecessary.
Mhm.
Somebody's in the cult of the other. You should
Mhm.
argue at times. You should have differences of opinion. You should be two individuals making the decision daily to come together to as partners to live this life, to be this team. If you just feel stuck or like you have no options or you have no voice, then
Yeah.
really what kind of relationship is that? It starts to sound like the cult, and that's not,
Exactly.
yeah, that's not the kind of relationship. I don't want to be married to somebody who's like me. I want to be married to
Mhm.
somebody who's not like me and has other ideas. And because
Mhm.
Lord knows I'm not always right. So, I need to be checked too. We all do.
Yes.
And so that's just part of being good partners for one another, right? But you just
Mhm.
can't get that in the organization. You're just not going to. Women aren't supposed
No.
to have that voice. Like you said, you didn't want to be a woman who reported to a man. It's the way you
Mhm.
said it, reported. The
Yes.
subservient nature of reporting to, taking it
Yes.
up the channels, so to speak, to
Mhm.
this man. That's not how that's not how good partnerships work.
No, not at all. But you're not taught that's healthy
Mm-mm.
within the organization. You're not.
No, no, not at all. That would be, see, you're a Jezebel or something, right? You're
With the red hair to match, I might add. The red hair to match. Okay? Red hair to match. So, yes, very true.
Yes, very true. Avoid all window casings.
Yep.
Right? Wasn't she tossed out the window or whatever?
Yes.
Uh, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, don't be near any windows.
No,
Uh,
and I'll make sure there's no dogs below too.
true. Yes. Oh, what a horrible story. Um,
Yeah.
so you end up so after you're reproved and you start,
Mhm.
but you've gotten this taste, this knowledge that there is something else out there for you, or that
Mhm.
there can be other types of relationships. Your mind
Mhm.
is opening more, or your heart is opening more to something else. Where do you go from there?
Well, I ended up moving out of my parents' house. There was a sister that was going through a hard time. She was going through a separation with her then husband, and he was on the fringe of the congregation at the time himself. And so I moved in with her to offer her companionship, and that was the next segue of my life to eventually being on my own. Because at that point, I was 21, 22, and realizing that the old adage, I was kind of becoming an old maid on the market is kind of how it felt, right? Because like I
So
wasn't
crazy at
being
21 or
actively,
22, but I get it.
yeah, yeah. So I was like, I'm like, all right, well, I just got to kind of, start making a pathway for myself and figure out what my next steps are going to be. And so fast forward about 6 or 7 months, and things developed in such a way that crime was committed. And it was by
Say
a member of the
crime was committed?
a crime was committed.
Hmm.
And it was something that shook me to the very core of my being. And it ended up being brought to the attention of the elders. And it was brought to the attention of the elders in such a way as they didn't want to talk about the act itself, because understandably they couldn't for legal reasons. But it was more so to come from the aspect of saying, don't speak his name, don't talk about what happened. We can't tell you that you can't go to the cops. But the reality is regardless of what happened to you, because you're reproved, we feel you didn't learn your lesson because you went with this person and you knew they were married, and it may have resulted in whatever happened, whatever you say happened. We're not going to besmirch his name or say anything like that. You can't prove it. But because you're reproved, you will be disfellowshipped on the grounds of loose conduct.
Wait a minute, so you so a crime was perpetrated on you,
Mm-hmm.
and because you were already in a reproved state,
Mm-hmm.
they just used that to judge you further,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of judging the person committing the crime,
Mm-hmm.
uh if you weren't going to judge it, why would you judge either party? If right, so that shows their feeling, unfortunately, toward women, but also so they didn't go after the other person at all. So did the other, if your reproval goes to disfellowshipping, does the other person go from good standing to reproved?
Well, he was already not really in good standing with the congregation himself to begin with.
Okay.
And so it was hard for the elders to get a hold of him to get his side of the story as to what happened. And they were using the two witness rule on me to say that I couldn't, I had the right to go to the law if I wanted to, but the reality is there weren't two people there to witness what happened. So it was my word against his.
Okay, but then how does that result in you getting punished further and nothing you know what I'm saying? Like, if there's not two witnesses, and so therefore the thing didn't happen, right?
Right.
Then how can you be punished for something that apparently didn't happen?
Because I was in the presence of a married man, and why would I allow myself to be there? Why would I allow myself to be in a position around a married man by myself?
Yeah, that's that's horrible. I'm sorry that happened. Well, no, I'm sorry the first thing happened to you and then was compounded by the second thing that happened. Um, and so this was a brother, like a random brother in the congregation then.
Yes. He was somebody I knew, let's put it that way.
Okay.
And my family knew, which made it
Oh,
worse,
okay.
which made it a lot worse. But no, I just remember sitting at that table because they called me in twice. And the only reason that I was there was because my sister took me in after I told her what had happened. And she said, you got to get out of that house now. You're coming here now. But
Oh, so
the condition
this
of you
went
leaving.
back to the house with the sister that you lived with or had gone
Mhm.
to stay with.
Yeah. Yeah. She said, you're not staying there anymore. You're gonna come live with me. And so the understanding was that if I did that, I needed to tell the elders what had happened. That was a condition because she wanted it out in the open, which I adamantly did not want to do, but I had nowhere else to go. I didn't have a choice. So yeah, so I sat twice in a room with three brothers, all older than me, and looking at me. And one of them had actually served on the judicial committee for my reproval.
Okay.
That had been like, I don't know, I think it was like 8 or 9 months before that. So he already had the full background. He knew what was going on. He knew, the history and everything that was in play. So, they did the traditional, try to get the story straight and tried to pick out the elements. And, they were trying to get the other guy on the horn for a couple of days because he just wouldn't answer the phone. I wouldn't if I was him either. And so that was after the first time that they sat me down. And then the second time they said, okay, now that we've heard it from you a second time, please go wait while we make a determination of what we're going to do. And I just remember sitting in that back hall and my hands were sweating and I was crying and I didn't know what to do because I didn't want to admit what had happened because I didn't even know where to go to start to heal from what had happened. Let
Yeah, we're
alone
just
sit
taking
by
your trauma and
myself.
now putting it right on display in front of these other men who are just going to increase the trauma. There's nothing
Yep.
to be done here. There's no healing here in any way.
No. So it was, and then, you come back and they say, well, we made a decision. You're going to get this fellowship on the grounds of loose conduct. And I actually lost it. I remember actively, it's just like they say in the show, snapped, where you just immediately, just something in your brain just triggers. And I remember standing up and my face getting so red and crying and screaming at them and saying, how dare you take my family away from me at a period in my life when I need them the most. And you're going to alienate me from them because you feel I deserve to be judged by you and you weren't even there. And I ended up leaving. So that definitely, that discussion right there definitively set the line to say, you're out.
Yeah, you
You're done.
clinched it right there. Yeah.
I clinched it right there by saying that.
But
Clinched it right there by
what you
saying that.
said was very true. You have a young lady who's hurting and needs support, and instead of support, again, Jehovah's Witnesses shoot their wounded. They don't help them. They
Yeah.
get rid of them.
Yeah.
And they, I mean,
Part that was actually more painful than that because I had to go and obviously then it's the perfunctory. You got to make the phone calls to family about what's going on and say, they're going to make the announcement in 2 weeks that I'm going to be disfellowshipped. And, you get ready for all, for the acts to come down to say, okay, I appreciate it. I'm done communicating with you, whatever. But believe it or not, that actually wasn't the hardest thing I had to do because when they disfellowshipped me, and I was in the back of the congregation doing what I was supposed to do. The wife showed up because she was a member of the congregation. And as far as she knew, she was like, well, you lived in my house. And then all of a sudden the next day you're gone. Like there's no explanation as to what the heck happened. You're just gone. And during the course of the judicial committee, one of the elders told me, he said, you are not allowed to tell her what happened. In any way, shape, or form, you are not to communicate with her. You are not to tell her. It is not based in fact. It is just your word against somebody else, and you cannot slander another member of the congregation without proof. And so I was sitting there in the back row as I was supposed to, and she came in and sat right in front of me. And I went, and of course I did the obligatory things. Of course, the elders are watching to say, is she, trying to come back or is she not? I kid you not. The prayer ended and she immediately spun in her chair and looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, why? Why'd you do it? Why'd you leave? And I looked to the left and the elder that had given me that advice was watching me to say, what are you going to do? And I remember, I'm shaking now, just remembering it. And I got my Bible and my songbook and the Watchtower, and I walked out of that Kingdom Hall and I'm like, I can't do this again. I was like, I'd never gone through an experience like that. It was easier to be in front of my mother and my father, with my father telling me, I hope you learned your lesson, which is why I still have problems with him having said that, because he'd been reproved himself and other issues within his own life, way worse than me. But I needed to learn a lesson. And then my mother guilt tripping me and saying, if you don't come back, I'll never forgive you. Those were easier conversations than having her spin on me and say, why did you leave? And
Well, probably to some degree because you weren't even allowed to have that conversation. She turns around and spins to you, and you're being muted by the elders who are trying to control the narrative in a situation. Whereas, at least with your parents, although what they said was awful, you did get to tell them what was going on.
yes.
Wait, so your parents then knew that, so they knew yours, you had been able to tell them your story that that
Mhm.
a crime
They
was
knew
committed,
everything. They knew everything. Because
and
he was actually somebody that my father knew.
you were told there was,
I
it
hope
doesn't sound like there
I
was,
hope that this would be he hoped it would be a turning point in my life, and that I would learn my lesson and come back to Jehovah and learn the error of my ways.
yeah, the addiction to the organization takes over, doesn't it? I mean, you
Yes.
see the lack of empathy, the inability to feel what's going on for someone else, and everything in the organization is just crime and punishment. You did a
Mhm.
thing, you have to be punished. And Jehovah doesn't make mistakes, right? Or Jehovah's Holy Spirit doesn't make mistakes. So it came from God, basically, because it came from those three men. So you apparently deserve it. And there's no empathy for people there. It's so cold and cruel.
And I felt, really bad because out of anybody that I hurt the most, I hurt my sister. And I hurt my sister because she went to bat for me with my parents to bring me into her home. And the reality is as time developed and as things within my life started to change, having gone through that experience, I mean, that pretty much was solidifying even more within my head to say, I can't live my life this way. But I didn't know where to go or what I needed to do to go to the next step. And so ultimately I was living under her roof, and it was a lie because it was all under the pretense that I was going to go back. And I didn't know, to be fair, I didn't know at the time that I wasn't going to go back. I really thought I was.
Well, let's
But
be
as
fair.
more,
And if we're gonna be fair, then let's say that you didn't hurt anybody here. Anybody who is hurt by their own standards and feelings,
true,
right?
true.
The presence of a gay person doesn't hurt the homophobe. The homophobe's belief hurt the homophobe.
Mhm.
The existence or presence of a person of color does not hurt the racist. The racist is hurt by their own thoughts and feelings and the way they move throughout the world, their identity. Uh, these people in our lives that were hurt by us, they weren't hurt by us. You did it to yourself. You played yourself. That's your beliefs, your feelings. You did that. I'm just me. I disassociated from the cult. I left their book club. If they want to be hurt,
True.
that's okay, but that's on them. That's their feelings, and they are hurt because of their beliefs, which are super messed up. I didn't do anything to you. I left your stupid club. I don't want to be a part of it anymore.
Now, so as things developed and I was living with my sister, my father was trying to help me come back. We were going to meetings, and he asked me at one point, he said, It's time, you should write your letter and ask for reinstatement. And I had such a hard time with that because I felt like I had to beg for in a situation that I didn't agree with in the first place and ask them out of the graciousness of their heart to let me back in. And there was no apologies, there was no I'm sorry for what happened to you or anything along that. It was all write us a letter and tell us how you've changed your life for us to consider bringing you back into the organization. And I thought about writing that letter. And then at the time, I was starting to really care about somebody in my life, a non believer. And I got thinking about it and saying, if I write this letter, I'm not being true to myself. And Jehovah can read my heart. And I'm not going to be true to myself because of many things that we've already talked about, but also because I love this non believer and I'm not going to give him up. So if I write this letter and I ask to be reinstated, why am I doing it? Just so I have my family back? Because I'm going to continue to live my double life with this person that I love. And I'm not going to let that person go. And so one thing led to another, and I moved out of my sister's place and I started my own life and went to college. And about 9 years ago, moved 3,200 miles away from home to the West Coast and really started my life over.
Well, again, it cuts to that fact that anyone who's listened for long knows I've mentioned before, but your double life, what Jehovah's Witnesses call your double life, is the life that's actually starting to reflect you and who you are and who you want to be. That double life is actually the witness life. The thing that you're going to pursue is actually what you, for the first time, are interested in. The things that they've kept away from you your whole life. The double life is the witness life that has been put upon you your whole life. And you were seeing in that moment that this is disingenuous. If I go back to this thing, that's not the life I want to live. That would be me living a double life against the life that I really truly care about and want to have for myself. You just never get a chance as one of Jehovah's Witnesses to figure out who you are and what life you would actually want to have. So who they are is the double life. You were actually just going to be yourself. And it also shows that nature of, like, if Jehovah's Witnesses really believe in their God, if they really believe in Jehovah, why do you think you can fool him?
Mm.
Right? There's so many people who go back to the organization and they're just doing it for family. And the organization knows you're just doing it for family. That's why they shun you and withhold family from you in the first place. So they don't care why you're back. They just want you back. But there are so many people and people I've worked with at times and known that they were going to disassociate, and their parents, their families begged them not to. Like, just stay anyway, even though you don't believe it. And it's like, so your God's so stupid I can fool him? Like, I thought that he read hearts. I thought that he understood everything. So if that's the case, he knows I'm disingenuous. And wouldn't that be a great affront to him? Why do you want me to lie to your God? It doesn't make sense.
No.
So it shows that they really don't believe on a lot of levels. There's a lot of things they profess to believe that they really don't.
It gives direction. It gives direction to a lot of people in life as to answering, at least on a surface level, without digging in any deeper about what life is about, the way that they spin it. And to give them the hope to sit there and say, my life could be so different tomorrow. As early as tomorrow, the Great Tribulation could be here, and my life will be different. My life will be different. And keep holding on to that dangling that carrot in front of them to say, one more day, just one more day, just handle it one more day, just handle it one more day. And then, but that's where your addictive tendencies also start to come into play too. Just one more day, just one more fix, just one more drink. And it feeds on it. It just keeps compounding an issue versus saying, whoa, wait, take a breath. Whoa. Like my parents, they're older individuals now. There's nothing there for retirement. Nothing. There's no planning because they never thought farther than the next day. That's all the way the whole life was. And so now being out of that, I mean, I'm appreciative to what they taught me. I'm not appreciative on some levels of stuff that happened to me that didn't need to, or certain things that I was forced to stand up for that I felt I never should have been in a position to stand up for. But at the same time, it's made me a lot stronger in who I am. And you're right. If you're living a double life, why are you living a double life? Because one of them is who you are. So why not be who you are in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah. You're a strong person despite those things, not because of those things.
And I have my challenges. I have my challenges.
None of us is
Believe me, I've got
perfect.
my challenges.
Yeah, none of us is perfect. That's okay. It's okay to have challenges. It's okay to struggle at times.
It's even hard to speak about this story, about what it is having gone through that, because there are some still very painful places that I still am not even comfortable dealing with. And it's been 13 years later.
My original podcast, This JW Life, is my story, which started all of this. You can listen to it today on podcast apps and find more at thisjwlife.com. Or if you're interested, you can read my book, Becoming Jehovah, online for free at becomingjehovah.com. Healing is a process, not an event. It takes time.
Yes.
And we have to be ready for it. And it's okay. We don't have to know everything today. We don't have to have it all figured out in one moment. That kind of cuts to what Jehovah's Witnesses, the way they move throughout the world. And, in 6 months, you study the knowledge book with us, or whatever the book is today. But I
Yep.
just remember when they came out with the knowledge book, it was 6 months, and you would basically know everything you ever needed to know in life based on that book. And that's so ridiculous. That's not how real life works.
We're looking at the news every day and referring to current events and saying, Great Tribulation is about to start. That's the trigger. Like, I remember 9/11 when the towers got hit.
Yeah.
It wasn't a call to say, oh my God, this is awful. It was a call of joy to say, oh my God, this could be marking the beginning of the Great Tribulation. This could be the beginning of the end. People died.
Yeah.
A lot of people died. And people were celebrating that it had happened.
They're
And
the
I was like,
ambulance chasers of religion.
yes, exactly.
They they they
Exactly.
they celebrate any tragedy is like, this is it, like, yay. And that is it is just mind-blowing to watch them, even when they do report with any empathy on what happened. It's always just, well, there was that earthquake that killed 200,000 people, but there were these two, well, they wouldn't even mention the 200,000 people. They would just say, you know, there were these two brothers and sisters that were killed. And that's all they would talk about. Not even humanize or give dignity to the rest of humanity who also died in some horrific event. And it's really gross to watch the lack of humanity that they show when they talk about these things. I'm sorry for the witnesses who were killed and everyone else who was killed in any kind of tragedy. It's always sad.
And that's why it actually spearheaded what I do now, because I fell into a line of work that, after I'd been disfellowshipped, I was working for the company part-time, and I decided to put myself through college. I went to night school at a community college to get my associates in business. And so I was working 2 jobs and doing that and just trying to figure out my life and where I needed to go. So a lot going on in a very short period of time. But
Yeah, because you have to
I started,
survive, right? You have to have
oh,
like basic
absolutely. And
survival
minimum wage
and
was not
try
going
to
to cut it.
thrive. That's a lot.
Yeah, minimum wage was not going to cut it. There was no. I was basically what I was trying to do was figure out how I could have a roof over my head, that I could be independent, and kind of, so that my decisions and my choices didn't affect anybody else, was ultimately my goal. Was to say, okay, whatever choices I make, my decisions going here are not going to affect anybody else, just myself, and just kind of go that way. So I could own the joys and I could own the sadness or whatever, because I was the one ultimately that was the brunt of those choices, right? And rightfully so. So the company that I worked for kind of fell into a line of work where college or university had asked them to say, look, I know you guys are environmentally friendly and recycling our universal waste and our refrigerators and equipment and everything else. Did you guys do anything with furniture? Never done anything with that before. And it opened up a door to start working with nonprofits through colleges and universities and school districts to say, this furniture is in really good condition. We can't provide the food. We can't for the medicine or anything like that, but we can give you furniture to help outfit your community centers or your hospitals, or, you know, the makeshift beds for refugees, whatever the case may be. And so I started doing that. And over the course of 10 years, I kind of worked my way up. Like I started low level and then, you know, worked my way up to logistics manager and was offered a position to run their West Coast office out of Santa Clara, California. So at that point, obviously, like I was not going back. Like it was definitive. I was done. I'd actually been married and divorced already. I'm like, you know, I just need a fresh start. And so I moved 3,200 miles to Santa Clara 9 years ago. And then at that point, you know, I moved in with my now husband. So we were there for a couple of years. And he's always dreamed of moving to San Diego. So he said, you know, let's go look, let's go check. Because you know, Santa Clara was just exploding at that point. It was right before COVID hit. And it was getting too much even for me, you know, being raised in small town life. And that to me was city life. So I'm like, can we move? Can we try? And so, you know, we made the move to come down to San Diego. And about 9 months after that, we were let go. We were laid off just because, you know, everybody and their brother was downsizing or restructuring. And unfortunately, we were a result of that. And so my husband and I were sitting on the couch with the news and saying, oh my God, this couldn't have come at a worse time. What are we going to do? And he said, you know, we got two options. You know, we've been able to make this line of work really well because he and I have been doing it together at that point together for over 12 years. He said, or we can go into different lines of work and start fresh. So what do you want to do? And I said, I really think we can make a difference here. I really think we can continue to make a change to whatever it is that, you know, it's a small niche, but let's see what we can do. And so our company, Furniture Reuse Solutions, was started that very week. And so she's 100% woman owned by me. And we have some staff here. We've got an office in Carlsbad. And I really now feel that I'm helping. And I never felt like that up until any point in my life that I felt I was helping. Going and knocking on somebody's door and saying, here's the word of God, or building a kingdom hall, never sat well with me because I didn't feel like we were helping the person. I felt like all we were doing was just advocating for a religion in any way, shape, or form based on what their criteria was. So now to have an opportunity to be going out in the field as it is and educating our clients about the benefits from a sustainability side of what the way their furniture can have an impact on the next generation, whether it's children or through buying furniture through thrift stores for different, you know, like restores, Habitat for Humanity restores, or there's a Teen and Challenge program that is exactly like it sounds. They help people overcome addiction. They have a thrift store that helps raise funds for those programs. It goes internationally, work with some huge charities that work all over the world. But it's in that conjunction to say they're part of a team for a bigger effort. And it's just furniture, but furniture can be so empowering to a child that all they've ever known is sitting on a floor. So it may not be medicine, it may not be food, but feel really good about what it is that we do. And I would never have had the gumption or the wherewithal to even think about running this business. You know, I got recognized down in Orlando in April for Woman Entrepreneur of the Year. There's only 40 women that got recognized. And I was one of those. And so you go from being broken and shattered and saying, I don't know where I'm going to go with my life. I don't know what to do next. And then to be rallied around by family and people that have nothing to do with your upbringing. And they just take you in and you say, I'm here to help. What can I do to help you? And you're just not used to it. It's like you want to shy away from it. It's like the knee-jerk reaction to say, you're not good for me. Like everything I've been taught says that you're not good.
Yeah.
And then they just envelop you with this love. And looking back in hindsight, it's like, I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. And I just look back on some of those experiences to say they were awful and they were very traumatic. I wouldn't be where I am now, But I also hope that maybe by hearing my story, somebody can hear it and be like, I understand that. I've been there. I'm there now. I don't know where to go next. And it's a very unique story. I definitely would never even think about being anywhere where I am in my life right now without the support structure that I have. You mentioned earlier about friends. They're not even necessarily friends. They are my comrade in arms. They're people that get down into the trenches with me to maybe make life a little bit better for somebody else. And I wouldn't trade that for the world. I really wouldn't.
So your website is what?
www.furniture-rs, R as in Robert, S as in Sam.com.
Oh, okay. Reuse solutions. Okay. And I just want to say, I know you're right. It's not medicine, it's not food, but furniture is expensive.
It is expensive. It
One of the
is.
higher markup industries in the world, and as I understand it, and to be able to provide furniture to somebody who's never had it. I mean, it's really like dignity. Being able to sit in a chair of your own instead of, not to diminish anyone who has to sit on a dirt floor or whatever, but just the fact that somebody can get up off the ground or have a bed to sleep in. Bedding is incredibly expensive, or
Mhm.
a table where a family gathers around it and eats. Furniture is central to most of our lives. It's not just something. It's not just an accessory. It's something we live on. So I'm
Or
really glad that you.
even if you bring it even into if you bring it into the United States on that level, you've got, I told you before, like my upbringing, we were very poor. We shopped at thrift
Yeah,
stores.
we
So
were
you
too.
have families that maybe are coming together again for the first time because somebody's been incarcerated. They don't have a
Mhm.
lot of money to start over. So they need to buy secondhand furniture, or there's furniture banks all over the United States. They don't even charge money. They just say, come get the furniture. We'll help you. What do you need? And then we supply them with the furniture that then can be deployed into the communities to give them their fresh starts. So you've got that too. Or, and then taking it from like the international level, we talked about, me listening to the missionaries when I was 17 years old at the district convention. I got a chance to go in country. I went to Nicaragua about 7 years ago. And I actually saw the face of a little girl. She came up, she gave me a piece, she gave me a letter. I couldn't read it because it was in Spanish. And I knelt down and she had tears in her eyes. And they translated it to me. And she said, this is the very first piece of furniture I've ever had in my life. Thank you for making a difference in mine.
Yeah,
And
we take these things
you
for
see
granted.
that, you see that and you hear that and you're like, we live in the United States. The idea of how to fathom living off of $1 a day, it's incomprehensible for most of us. But yet you go into these countries and their fathers are gone for 6 to 8 months a year. The dad's gone because he's chasing in Nicaragua, especially because that's where we went. They're chasing the harvest, the sugarcane harvest. So when the sugar canes are near the volcanoes in Nicaragua, outside Managua, then they're home. They're with their families. Otherwise, they have to keep going down the coast and stay with the cane crop as it matures. And so the father's not even there with the kids half the time. And so they just being in that environment, we're seeing the community centers. They had a food hall set up with all the tables because they had a community kitchen there from another nonprofit that they were supplying all the rice and the beans and everything else. So it was showing it in action to say, you're right, it's just furniture. But now the community's coming together, they're sitting down and they're enjoying a meal through another nonprofit providing them the food. And it's like, and you go home and you go to bed and you say, regardless of whatever happened that day, to say, I did something good with my life. I did something good. I helped somebody other than myself, I made a difference.
Yep.
And we do it on a very, very large scale. Nationwide, we do it on a large scale, corporations, colleges, and school furniture. So that's why I was saying earlier to say that guilt that used to be in me to say, if tomorrow came, would I survive? Doesn't really have that. I don't have that fear anymore. Because I feel like through all of this, I just may have found my calling.
Well,
If I'd be
if you
fortunate
have
enough to say
peace in
that.
your you have peace in your life today with who you are and what you're doing, so you don't have that concern. You actually know who you are and you're doing something that matters, and if an unfortunate thing were to happen and you weren't with us anymore or whatever, you've done something really good that's bigger than you, and that feels great. I know what that's like, and that feels really good.
It does feel really good. It does feel really good. And yeah, at the same time, I also know what it feels like to be on the back end, to just be starting out and saying, what do I do? How do I get there?
Sure.
And the reality is you can get there. It's a lot of work, takes a lot of time, but as I said at the beginning of this podcast, when we we're going through, what was that saying that meant a lot to me? Choose your heart. Choose your heart.
Yeah, and it's gonna be hard, but it's okay. It's okay for things to be hard. Why
Yeah.
why why do we
Yeah.
expect everything to be easy? The things that are worth having in life usually are difficult to get, right?
Mhm. It is.
Typically, people don't just knock on your door and happen to hand you the truth of all that has ever been and all that will ever be. Usually, you gonna have to get out of your house to meet
Yep.
people if you want friends or if you want to date or if you want a job or whatever the case is. All the good things in life are going to involve some sort of investment of time, energy, resources, whatever. It doesn't just come knock on your door.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
if you want to tell your story on the podcast, buy merch, or get more information, go to shunnedpodcast.com. Well, so at this point in your life, obviously you're doing beautiful things. And I will get in a second to we'll end on a positive note what you enjoy about your life today, even outside of the work. But um what's so is your situation? So today, I think you said so your mom, your dad, and a sister are still Jehovah's Witnesses, and are you shunned by them?
Mhm. Yes.
Okay. And you have other siblings though who are you have what, two other siblings I think who are out? Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Two older brothers. Yes.
Okay. And how long has it been since you've seen your parents or sister? You said 13 years.
Last time I saw my parents, actually, hmm, yeah, last time I saw my parents was 12 years ago, and my sister 10 years ago.
Okay.
That's how long it's been.
Um, if you had an opportunity to say anything to them, is there anything that you would even want to say?
And I'm doing okay. That I've survived this, and that I hope, regardless of anything, I respect their choices, and the way that they choose to live their life. I know on some small front, I don't think they will ever respect the choices that I've made, but I hope deep down on some level they're proud that I was able to overcome some of these situations or scenarios that they themselves know had to have been hard through their own personal experiences, and just what exactly it took to be where I'm at today. And I hope on some level they're proud that I'm doing something good with my life.
Um, and beyond that, can I ask, is there anything that you've done uh, since you've left or that you do in your life today that you really enjoy, that you're proud of, right? You're talking about being proud, right? Obviously, you're proud of the work that you do. What else is good in your life today?
Well, my bucket is overflowing.
Okay, good.
So it's kind of hard to say, but I would say that one of the biggest things is that I have a man in my life that is everything to me. And he's been with me through thick and thin as friends first, as coworkers, and now business partners and marriage mates. And so he's been there really through the very beginning of this 17 years ago. I've known him for that long. And, I was shunned at 25. So that's coming up on almost 13 years now. So, all of those things to take into consideration. I don't take relationships or friendships or any type of connections for granted anymore. I don't believe in there ever being a tomorrow to tell somebody how you feel. And that's because I know that what I have is owed to those around me stepping up and saying, I can help. I'm here for you. And for me to have the open-mindedness to listen, even when it was incredibly painful, because of course, sometimes there's things said that you really don't want to hear, let alone do anything about. But yeah, I mean, I love where I live. I never in a million years ever thought I would live in San Diego, ever. And now to look out on my life and say, there's pain. I miss my family a lot. But I also know my brothers and I have reconnected over the last 5 years. In as much that my eldest brother even walked me down the aisle 3 years ago. So not all is lost. Not all is fallen to the wayside, so to speak. I still have remnants of family there. And, we're trying to build together as a family and let go of what was done to us to have healthy adult relationships as we grow older. So I'm very, 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 very grateful and very, very blessed. And just given the opportunity to even run a business, let alone having the ability to do something that I love is just, I don't even know how to put that adequately into words.
Well, I think that's a good way to end this. That you don't even have the words to end it because you have such gratitude and because you enjoy the life that you've built. And what happens to us is when we're young isn't necessarily our responsibility. We didn't do that. But as we get to be adults, how we move forward, that does start to fall on us to some degree. And it's only us that can change that. And you are an example of someone who has put the effort in, done the hard things, and done what you needed to do to get where you are today with the help of others, which is also cool because you don't have to do everything alone. There's help available and there's support. And I just love that you've been able to put all that together into a life that ultimately you love today. That's what it's all about.
Really is.